we're covering medical devices again with our getting the most out of your health insurance coverage. So with that, we're inviting Renee, who's going to be discussing with us her experience. I talked about this 2 weeks ago, but we want to have Renee's experience specifically about what she's been gone through with her with getting medical devices. So with that, Renee, could you just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your disability?
Okay. Well, my name is Renee Lopez, and I live in Austin, Texas. And my disability is called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, which basically is a birth defect. It affects my limbs, my arms, and my legs. I use a motorized wheelchair right now, but I've also used braces, long leg braces. I can stand up and pivot and things like that. And so I have been a person who's used medical equipment my entire life.
Okay. What right now? What kind of health insurance do you have? What kind of coverage do you have? Is it public or private?
I guess it's private. I have Medicare now, and I was able to work for 30 years for the state of Texas. So I have state insurance through Medicare.
Okay. Is with with that coverage, what do you use that coverage for? Like what are the primary areas that you use your coverage? Um,
Primarily, it's for medical. I do since I've gotten older. I'm 60 years old, and since I've gotten older, I've required more and more medication. I have to have more doctor's visits, and so that's primarily what I use it for right now. But I also have to use it to get my wheelchair um, fixed or replaced or repaired, or and then the leg braces that I wear, I also have to uh, like replace the leather that's on there or have them fixed whatever's wrong. So they do a lot of brace repair as well.
how long have you been using a wheelchair?
I started using it about 15 years ago. I used to walk with braces, and then I fell and I broke my hip, and I had to have a hip replacement, a left hip replacement. And then just as I was starting to walk again, I fell again and broke my left knee. And after that, I thought it's time to sit down. I couldn't. I have osteoporosis, which I didn't know until I broke my hip. And since then, I thought maybe I didn't want to risk falling anymore because now I was breaking parts of my body.
I can relate to my balance being off, and that being one of the main reasons I started using a chair.
Yeah,
So I can certainly relate to that.
yeah.
Uh, in terms of the so 15 years, how many different did you immediately start using a power chair? Did you start out with a manual chair?
No, I can't use a manual chair because I can't wheel myself because my arms
Mhm.
are at an angle; they're flexed. And so I had to start with an electric chair. I used an electric chair when I was in college because there was no way I could go from one building to another walking in braces and all kinds of weather and students milling about. And so I got it. That was when I first started using a wheelchair, but I only used it on campus. I went to the University of Texas, which is a huge campus,
Mm.
but I didn't really need it for my day to day life other than just to go to and from class. And then I got a wheelchair to use like when I have to go to the mall or something long distance, Six Flags, the zoo, something like that, where I couldn't do
Mhm.
all that walking. And and then I started out getting a small wheelchair, um, and realized that as I got older and weaker, I needed a chair that could do more. And the chair that I have now, for example, reclines, and I can lean my back, the back part, like to lay it down, and that's been really good because it's relieved a lot of back problems. And I can recline to lift my legs up so they don't swell as much as they used to. So my chair has actually gotten bigger and with more equipment.
Okay. What so throughout that course of that time, then how many different chairs have you had?
I've probably had about five.
Okay.
I had an old E&J that lasted me through college, and then I didn't have a wheelchair at all, and then I got a small one just to get around in places where I couldn't. And this is probably my second full-time chair.
Okay. And how long have you had this one?
It's getting close to 5 years. And the reason I say that is because I know it's time to start looking for a new one. And that's part of the problem with getting wheelchairs nowadays is you have to jump through so many hoops just to get a new chair. And you have to go through your insurance, and you have to get through your doctor and get a prescription, go through the insurance, get approved, find out who the provider is going to be. Then you have to go for measurements, I guess, to find out what's the right chair for you through a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, and then they write up their thing, and then we look for the chair that meets my needs. And unfortunately, back in the day, I'm going way back, like in the 80s, you could go like to Travis Medical and actually sit in different chairs to find out which one would work best for you. But now you have to look through a magazine or online and try to find the right chair. And the first time I got this chair, they had it was just too much going on. It had leg rests that elevated, but they didn't work for my legs because I get up a lot. I'd have to transfer from my wheelchair to my driver's seat. I also have a van, and so the foot pedals didn't work, and I couldn't get good lumbar support, so we had to work with a therapist on that. But I already had the chair, so we had to like get around it as best we could with pieces of styrofoam and stuff like that, so it would be more comfortable. So I'm already kind of dreading the idea of having to get a new chair, and I know it's going to take months before I even get it.
Yeah, well, and if people haven't had the opportunity, you can go back and watch the one we had 2 weeks ago where I talked about what I just went through to get a new
Right.
chair. So I'm all too familiar with that. In terms of the your specific chair that you have now, you say you've had that about 5 years. Do you recall how long that process took when you went through it 5 years ago?
I think it took months. I remember thinking that it's taking. I was like, this is taking way too long. And luckily, I had my other chair, and that one was causing me a lot of back problems, and it didn't recline and things like that to relieve the pressure. So I was anxious to get out of it, and but I thought it took way too long, and I was beginning to wonder if, like, is it stuck somewhere? And then they had me go through a company that I had never heard of before and didn't want to go through, and but I didn't have a choice. It's what Medicare chose for me, and I did not like that company. And as it turns out, they don't have anyone here in Austin. So if I need a repair, I have to call Dallas so they can make an appointment with the technician in San Antonio to come to Austin to repair it. And thank God, knock on wood, that I haven't had any serious problems. Uh, but if my chair ever just stopped working, I would probably have to wait days before I could get a technician out here.
I was just going
So
to say
I'm really afraid of that.
those are for people that aren't familiar with Texas. Those aren't towns that are right near each other. So
No, they're not. Texas is huge.
so I imagine that, yeah, you said that would be my question is, well, if that's the case, how long does it take for a technician to come to do a repair? Have you had that experience lately?
Yeah, but just a few weeks ago, I need my foot pedals kept falling and they wouldn't stay up. And I don't know. I think to me, in my opinion, chairs are made cheaply now because they're made of
Mhm.
plastic, and one hit against the wall or something and it's shot. Back in the day with the old E&Js, they were E&Js, Ernest and Jennings. Um, they were made of steel and metal, and yeah, they were super heavy and all that, but they were very sturdy.
Mhm.
um, my foot pedals would fall, and I need them to stay up so that I can stand up and transfer to the bathroom, or to stand up and get into my driver's seat, and they would not stay up. And so they kept moving. They were real wobbly, and I called to get they I called, and they found out that they had the one little office in Austin closed down. So they said you have to call Dallas and make an appointment with them, and they'll call San Antonio and send the tech over, but he only comes to Austin on Tuesdays. And so I had to wait like a week before he could come to me. And, you know,
Oh my gosh.
Like I said, that was an issue I could deal with, but it's not. It's not practical. I mean, someone shouldn't have to wait that long to get a chair repaired. And
Mhm.
other companies that are in Austin don't want to touch it because it's not their product. It's not their chair. They're not. They don't like to touch wheelchairs that belong to another company.
Mhm.
So
No, I can certainly relate to sometimes those waits on repairs, and it can be really problematic. Um, when you're trying to go through the process of getting a new chair or getting a repair authorized, have you experienced issues with the insurance company in terms of approving it or getting having to get prior approval or any added delays because of that?
yeah, I don't know why it takes them so long. Getting the prescription from my physician does not take a long time. That my doctor's pretty good about writing the prescription right away, but then I have to send it to the insurance company, and that takes sometimes a month before they even respond to it. And so I just don't understand why it takes so long. Sometimes I've had to call them, but it's if you've ever tried calling an insurance company, you get the runaround and press this, press that, then that person isn't there that day. I mean, it's a real hassle.
Hmm. Are there any tricks that you've learned to sort of get around some of those delays, or sort of maybe get ahead of things at all?
Well, one thing I've learned for sure is that I keep my old chair.
Mhm.
I've got two wheelchairs right now, and I just happen to have room in my house for two wheelchairs. Now, when I lived in a really small apartment, that was really difficult. But at least I knew that if this wheelchair went down or needed repairs or didn't run or whatever, I had my old chair to fall back on. And so that's one thing I've learned. I used to get rid of the chairs right away just because for space and what the heck, I had a new chair. What was there to worry about? And I learned right away that's not the case. The other thing is I try not to wait too long. Like I like to get the ball started early, even before it's 5 years, because by the time I get the prescription that goes to the insurance company, and by the time they look at it, it is at 5 years. So I try not to wait too long. I try to get it started as soon as possible.
Okay. And I can relate to that. I saw what was coming with my chair, and
Right.
I certainly started that process early, knowing that it was going to take some time. In terms of the cost and everything, I know that certainly medical devices, especially, are not cheap. And is there anything that have you done to sort of offset costs or help in copays or anything that you had to cover related to getting your chairs in the past?
Well, I think Medicare paid 100% for this one, but when I was working, I had a copay because I didn't have Medicare, and the insurance only paid 80%, and my state insurance, that is. And so the 20% was still really, really high.
Hmm.
But because I was working, I was able to go through the Texas Workforce Commission, and they would pay that 20% to keep me working, right?
Hmm.
So but I don't work now, I'm retired. And so luckily, right now, Medicare pays 100% of it.
Okay. So you said the Texas Work Commission, is that their vocational rehabilitation
Yeah,
program then
that's
in
vocational
Texas?
rehab. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good resource if people are plugged in. Now, those vary from state to state, but those if that's available to you to sort of help offset that cost. I know that when I had to have the lift put in my van for my chair, I was still living in Pennsylvania at the time, and my vocational rehab in Pennsylvania helped me pay to put that lift in my van. So that's a great resource that folks, if they're not familiar with it, should check out. Every state has a vocational rehabilitation program,
Right.
and check that out because sometimes it's very useful in those kind of things.
Don't try to pay that 20% if you don't have to, because it will eat you up. I mean,
Sure.
20% of 60,000, you know,
Hmm.
it's yeah, don't let that intimidate you from getting the wheelchair you need. But I think the vocational rehab is a very good resource.
Okay. Any other thoughts you have about insurance? Maybe not related to your medical devices, doctors, prescriptions, anything like that that you've encountered problems in the past with related to your disability?
Well, the insurance that I have right now is pretty good. I like Medicare. It has taken good care of me now that I'm on it, and but I always worry that we're going to get some new president or something, and it's going to change. I remember that when I was a kid, the insurance was very prompt at paying. And when I was little, I never had any problems getting my needs met, but as I became an adult and as I get older, it seems to be more and more difficult. And but right now, the biggest problem I have is you know uh, the hassle I'm going to have to go through to get a brand new chair.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately all too familiar a story for those of us that need those. And we wish you the best of luck as you start that process because it sounds like you're getting ready to do it. So,
Get ready.
by all means, yeah, best of luck to you as you go through that process, and hopefully it works out. I know that if you watched the video I did 2 weeks ago, I talked about one of the things I mentioned was they were able to do some of the stuff, especially because one of the benefits, sort of our linings, I should say, of COVID has been the fact of the advance of telehealth. So some of the when the tech came out to me to check me for the chair, they
Yeah.
were able to have the PT come on via telehealth and do both of those at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So they were available on the phone and they could see me and do the evaluation right from there along with the tech. So it really helped streamline that part of it. There were still other delays I experienced,
Yeah.
but that is something that if you have an opportunity to take advantage of something like that, now that we have those advancements, I would encourage you to do that. So best of luck as you start the process again, and thanks for sharing your story and your experience.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yep. All right. So with that, we'll wrap up today's Facebook Live, and we want to thank you for joining us and thank Renee for joining us. Join us next week. We hope we'll be wrapping this series up. We're still trying to identify someone on to talk to us about prescription drugs, but we hope to have we have a good lead on that we hope will be able to meet with us next week to talk about that topic. Obviously, a very important topic that a lot of people with disabilities take advantage of with their health insurance coverage is getting prescription drug benefits. So with that, I really want to thank you all for joining us today. These are all being archived on our YouTube channel. So by all means, if you missed a prior week and you want to go back and view them, I would encourage you to check that out. We've had sessions talking about rehabilitation and habilitation benefits. We had one on mental health. We had one that I did 2 weeks ago on medical devices as well. And then last week, we did one on access to specialists. So I would encourage you to check those all out if you haven't had an opportunity to view them yet. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.